Hello, and welcome to another fully live news episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today it's just me driving the show. Killian is off doing pre-RSA things, RSAC things. So yeah, it's just going to be me today. So we're probably going to see more of Killian at the RSAC conference, which is coming up so incredibly soon. So I will see you next at the RSAC conference, and my mobile setup here is kind of just testing whether or not I can do this anywhere. I don't know if you can see these penguins over my shoulder, but this is one of my favorite pictures I've seen in actually a really long time. So trying out doing the stream on the go, and we'll see how it works out this time. Last time the camera died, so this time I have it plugged into the wall. Let's see what happens. So good to see everybody in the stream today. I was like, why is nobody talking in the chat? What did I do wrong? And then I realized I forgot to connect our stream to the event until the last second. So good to see everybody here. Lot to talk about today. There were a lot of breaches, a lot of pretty crazy things happened. And also I wanted to share a video that I have coming out fairly soon, just talking about all the stuff that I've been telling you guys about LoRa. So of course I've been talking up LoRa for a while. I have these cool add-on boards. The wire doesn't need to be this long. In fact, it's too long. But these little things could talk for multiple miles, and I've been showing them off in various ways. And I finally put together a little video on how it all works and looks. Now, we did run into a little bit of a problem, and that is my drone didn't have the signal range to properly record how far we could actually send signals. So we wanted to get this like nice shot of us like trying to send a signal and getting something on the other end, like hacking. And I think we did a pretty decent job. I'm going to show you all right now. I showed it on the Wednesday stream, but I just want to show it off again because it's nice. Here we go. This is me putting the LoRa chip on the back of a Nugget. And in this case, we needed to find a location where I could actually do a Rickroll from at least a mile away, but still have control of the drone. So soldering this on using our tiny little hot plate that's the size of, by the way, like it's designed for making a crouton toasted. So if you get one of these little miniware hot plates, just be prepared for how small they are. It looks like it's designed to heat like a sugar cube, maybe. So this is the drone video. All right, so that is how far I was able to get the drone to successfully fly before we started getting low signal. And then this was the actual Rickroll. So stay tuned for another video I'm going to be releasing on the code that I used to write this and how simple it was to use LoRa in my own projects. I was pretty encouraged to see that Adafruit had made a board that uses this exact same chip that I'm using in this project. So if you're a fan of Adafruit, if you like to make your own stuff, then I think you'll find it pretty fun. So I'm having a lot of fun with it. And of course, I also took a trip to Goodwill and picked up some stuff. So I kind of specialize in like hardware hacking, like IoT devices, Wi-Fi, where that all comes together in a very fun and pleasant way is the kinds of things that you see donated at Goodwill. So this is a camera that has some information left on it. And of course, when these things are donated, there's maybe not a super clear procedure for what you need to do to make sure that there's nothing left over. Now, there's some things I haven't covered on this channel that I'm trying to find like the right way to do, because I go to Goodwill and find these things all the time. And I found someone's Apple time capsule where they're like, let's get rid of this router. And they just left their entire hard drive with all their work files and everything on it. I'm like, how do I even talk about this? Like this is so much personal information. On this little camera, we had Wi-Fi credentials, and we also had just like some woman's face from below, like fiddling with the camera and then like eventually deciding to get rid of it. So it looks like this person got the camera, connected it to their Wi-Fi, turned it on one time, decided they hated the thing, and then threw it away. And then eventually it found its way to me. So when people talk about like, oh, how did my password get leaked, or how did this information get out there? Like a lot of the time there's ways of losing information when you're getting rid of an object that's it's an IoT device, some sort of cyber object. We sometimes forget that these things still might have a lot of sensitive information on it. So just a little reminder, since we're talking cyber tools here, I can take one of these devices, I can dump the firmware on it, I can do what's called bin walk on it and kind of look through it and see if there's any interesting strings, or I can just find log files on this and run strings on it and see if there's any passwords or anything else interesting that I might find. In this case, There absolutely was. And I can't share it because it's just too much. But let's just say that if you're going to donate one of these cameras, you should really take out the SD card stored right here. So I see this kind of all the time. Just a little PSA that yeah, if you have electronics you're donating or electronics that your loved ones are donating, make sure to factory reset it or remove any storage media, because I will be there collecting things at the Goodwill, looking through the data and wiping it, but first just being amazed at what kind of stuff people leave there. If you want to infect a very old and dirty Chromebook, or sorry, not Chromebook, it's a old ThinkPad that is soon destined to end up at Goodwill itself, then that's probably a good way to get me, actually. All right, so I missed that forehead, Kody. Yes, I got a haircut. Thank you for noticing. Good of the stream to be aware of that. I don't know what those other emojis mean. Oh, the crying. Okay, good. I'm hopefully that's good crying. All right, so we've got more stuff to cover today, and mostly there is a lot of cybercrime. But I also wanted to talk one more thing about Goodwill donations. This was probably the funniest other donation I found. Like, this is a lithopane of just a picture of someone's kids. So I guess this 3D this company, like, they'll 3D print. It's just somebody maybe on Etsy where you send them a picture of your kids and they 3D print a moon, and then they send that to you. So this is like, it's often just strange to me to find someone's very specific personal information, but I've never seen like a photo of someone's children etched into a moon for sale. Also, I saw this in the wild, and I just want to say this is one of my favorite things when I do see it. I really like when people try to talk to the towel machine, and I've tried to get this behavior myself to be more popular, and I have to say, like, I'm pleased to see other people joining in the game of trying to get people to say "towel now" to the machine. I've only seen it in the wild once. And then I was also seeing, this post was kind of blowing up. A lot of people were talking about how this AI-based device that was pretty popular initially, like a lot of people were saying it was cool looking or at least interesting, is basically just an Android device that's scaled down, and it's like a concept kind of thing that's running on kind of not a great Android phone. And that's really all it is. And it's just connected to AI in a way that anybody can kind of connect an account to AI nowadays. And it doesn't really have that many integrated or special features. You can just basically run it on any piece of hardware. So maybe that's what they should sell. I don't think that that's in their strategy, though. So yes. And then we also have this. So when talking about hacking tools, there's also things that are out there that are made by, the private sector that hoover down a lot of data, and their explicit purpose is to collect information and sell that data. So when you see these being installed in your neighborhood, you might be curious what they are. And I have seen these before. I'm aware of this, but I realized after seeing how popular this post was that a lot of people are not aware of what these posts do. So I've reported before about like automated license plate data. So that means like processing video camera information and turning it into a database that, when connected to a bunch of different nodes, offers you virtually no privacy anymore if you ever go out in your car. These private video cameras can collect information and they can sell it to whoever they want. And often they will sell it in a way that makes it so somebody abusing the system would have access to a ton of information. Just a scenario, like if somebody had like a domestic partner dispute with somebody who was even loosely connected to a police agency, even if it was in a completely other state, that person would have access to basically type in their partner's license plate number and track them as they moved across a completely other city in a completely separate state. So obviously this caused a lot of concerns. There were a lot of violations that were discovered of people abusing these sorts of systems. So creating more siphons of information to pour into these already kind of controversial systems is not something that a lot of people want in their neighborhoods. So while these are put up under the guise of public safety, it's interesting to see the public reaction to learning about how much information these cameras are actually like scraping. And that, of course, probably includes some amount of facial recognition if somebody is either suspected of a crime, if somebody's in an area where people think they're not supposed to be there. But also, I think the automated license plate readers is really my least favorite thing. They record so much information, and they make so that there's no expectation anymore of being able to be in your vehicle and not be tracked all of the time. A lot of people have kind of a defeatist attitude on that, and they feel like, okay, we're being tracked by so many other things, like why does this matter? But I think that, just having a private database that can be abused this way is not a future that we need to indulge in. Like, if there's some legal purpose for authorities to scrape up this information, then that's something that's already being argued in the courts, and the limits of that are kind of being tested. But private companies getting into the game honestly really sucks, because they're not, at least in the United States, under much of an obligation to keep this information private. So we're about to talk about like 20 data breaches in a row, of thinking about the amount of information that's being collected here, and the lack of protection that's really required in the US anyway. I would just inevitably tend to see like either a data breach or some sort of abuse of the system being the result of scraping up this much information. I'm very anti-surveillance though, so that's my personal like feeling on that. But seeing these crop up all over the place, I'm not necessarily for it. When it involves kind of signing over your right to drive by it without being recorded and then having that information sold. Where? I don't know. But, like if it impacts you going to medical care or like some other things that are very telling about your lifestyle or who you are, that to me is probably very dangerous to people down the road. So anyway, hate to see them. And a lot of people in the comments here also were indeed hating to see these too. So next up, I saw this drop. When was this? This was May 1st. Okay, so Dropbox filed a 8K with the SEC. So this is a relatively new reporting requirement that says if you have a breach of a specific size, if it's like a certain amount of bad, I guess, then you need to file a report that informs like shareholders and everybody else about roughly what's going on. It doesn't need to be crazy detailed. It doesn't need to be like a full rundown, but they do need to give a general, they basically can't hide it anymore. It's no longer legal to do that. And I think it's amazing that it's taken us this long to get here, where I'm like, oh, wow, they filed like a reporting. But most companies like to handle breaches on their own terms, and they don't want to talk about them until it's absolutely necessary. And we only kind of find out maybe as users are like contacted. But these sorts of reporting requirements, I think like seeing these, I actually really like it. I think it provides transparency that like previously wasn't available. And we'll dive into this breach a bit later because it's a little worse possibly than it might initially sound. All right, so I also want to just say hello, everyone. I am watching the chat. I also am driving today though, so switching between screens and everything is my responsibility. All right, let me select my other screen. All right, and here we go. So there's a lot of news, and I want to go through some of my favorite stories first, just because that's how I am. So let's do it. This one was a wild story. I caught wind of this when it originally like hit the courts. I think it's like over a year, but this guy was the CEO of several companies that were mostly created to evade the fact that he kept getting caught by customs doing this stuff and being told to stop. This CEO went about selling $100 million worth of counterfeit Cisco equipment. And this ended up in so many different places that the military ended up complaining about like multiple failures and problems and stuff. Education, healthcare, government, like this really went all over the place. And the fact that he was able to get so many people to buy these counterfeit goods and put them in critical places just shows that he was actually pretty good at counterfeiting this stuff when it came to getting people to believe it was new and genuine equipment, when in fact it was old and pretty useless equipment that wasn't able to do a lot of the things that the customers were trying to get it to do. So this went on for a really long time, and he just kept getting caught. And there was a ton of damage that was assessed because of the failures and malfunctions, which were apparently significantly damaging to customer operations and networks. But between 2014 and 2019, Cisco sent 7 letters to him telling him to stop trafficking in counterfeit goods. And he responded to 2 of these by causing his attorney to provide Cisco with forged documents. So he really like doubled down rather than not doing it anymore. When confronted with evidence that he was counterfeiting, he just kept doing it and made some like kind of like bodged together documents to kind of like get off the hook, at least for a small amount of time. So yeah, 6 months in prison is a lot, but considering that this went into critical organizations and ended up causing significant failures, like I guess it's not that surprising. But yeah, this is one of those stories where when you have somebody causing this much damage through just pure greed, I guess I can see why the 6-year prison sentence is appropriate. Apparently, there was also substantially more prison time that he could have served. So, all right. This one is an old, feels like an old story, but it's been made new again. If you are a developer and you are being asked to do coding assignments, that's a pretty common thing. And that is something that is being exploited by threat actors and has been. I believe this was called Project Dream Job when it was done by like North Korean hacking groups. But this kind of relatively common tactic has been opened up to just about everyone now, where if somebody wants to be able to hack a developer, they can offer them a job via social engineering and then ask them to work on a project that involves importing a custom NPM repository. Now, these NPM repositories actually have JavaScript in them that allows a backdoor to be created. Image details.js. And then at that point, the threat actor can exfiltrate information, monitor the backdoor, steal. I mean, this was kind of originally targeted at security researchers so that if they had some sort of interesting threat research, then you could kind of get a 2-for-1 and not only infect their computer, but also, like maybe get a cool and interesting 0-day they haven't reported yet. But this has now been expanded to just attack developers in general, and it only involves a little bit of social engineering. So the barrier to entry is pretty low. Now, who might be doing this, you might ask? Well, anybody who's an initial access broker, who's basically just someone sitting in a room with a computer that's just trying to trick you into giving access to your organization. That is the person who would do this. And they would probably be pretty good at it too. So be on the lookout for these sorts of dream job attacks. I think that's a good name for it, just because they are so simple to execute. And these NPM attacks, they've really had a difficult time preventing malicious code from being hosted in those repositories. And a simple typo squatting attack is all it takes to make this happen. So if you're being asked to use a custom NPM library or just something that looks a little bit off, just be really careful, because even if it doesn't seem off, it could still be like one of these sneaky malicious NPM libraries, especially if you're copying and pasting code from another source. All right, we've got a data breach from Kaiser Permanente. So this may impact 13.4 million patients. And initially I thought this sounds incredibly, incredibly bad, but reading through it, it's only moderately super bad. So this apparently seems like it had something to do with tracking pixels or some sort of tracking information that was being taken while people were using the service. So that means if you were logged into your Kaiser Permanente account, and you were doing certain searches, like you were looking at medical conditions, that was linked to your IP address, and it was sold off apparently, or otherwise allowed to be collected with an extensive network of marketers, advertisers, and data brokers. So all those embarrassing searches that you did in their database potentially are now linked to your online presence and shared with people who are going to use it to make a profit and try to sell things to you, or try to sell things to people who provide services to you. It's all kind of out there. So 13.4 million patients. This is also, again, including IP addresses, names, information that could indicate a patient or member was signed into a Kaiser Permanente account, how a member or patient interacted with and navigated through the website, mobile applications, and search terms used in the health encyclopedia. So basically, all of your interactions with the mobile application and website could have been siphoned through this kind of data broker portal. So that's obviously not great, because that information is supposed to be private and it's healthcare information. So that's supposed to be very privileged. So exfiltration of this sort of information through improperly configured web services is not something I see all the time, but it is something that was recently settled by another company that was found to be doing online therapy, but also had tracking pixels that were recording a lot of the information of users who signed up. So this is not the first time, even this month, that I have seen a news headline indicating that these tracking pixels or siphoning of data while people are using a service ends up being a big problem later on. All right, I really like this story. Japan has started combating some of these senior fraud attacks, where he's calling and saying, hey, you have a virus, I'm here to fix it. These sorts of attacks cost senior citizens a lot of money. And typically they'll go into a store, they'll purchase a card, like a gift card, and then they'll take it and they'll send it to the attacker, and the attacker is able to cash out, and it's very difficult to trace. So some police agencies in Japan had put up cards that say things like virus Trojan horse removal payment card or unpaid bill late fee payment card. Basically, like picking the most popular or common terms that attackers use to pretext these sorts of social engineering attacks and putting them directly on the card. Now, the point of this is to make it so that seniors or other people who are, being attacked will see this, be like, oh, this is perfect. This is for exactly what's happening to me. Like, I found the right card. And attackers have kind of a hard time controlling that because they're like, no, don't use the ones that are specifically for this thing I'm telling you this whole thing is about. Not that one. So the idea here is that store employees have been trained on talking to seniors who pick up one of these cards and bring it to the front. And they basically attempt to de-escalate the situation, make sure that the senior doesn't lose any money by sending it to somebody who's scamming them, and also tries to get the police involved to catch the scammers who are requesting the cards in the first place. I think this is a pretty novel approach. Like, attacking this at the source is one thing, because I think a lot of store employees have maybe dealt with, especially like Walmarts and stuff like that, have dealt with senior citizens coming in, buying gift cards and saying that they're doing it because somebody, say they need to do it in order to fix their computer, or that like some other scam is going on. So it's kind of difficult to know what to do in those situations. And I think the training around that has gotten better, but putting up some honeypots almost for people who are falling for the scam, I think is a useful way of potentially catching people who might be about to make a serious mistake. This one I also hate. 1.9 million people involved in this breach of a collection agency. And this is when I read it, I was like, oh, well, maybe it's not that bad. I would assess this as pretty seriously bad. So this is a social engineer's absolute dream, because all of the information here tends to be about either active or recently closed out debts. Now, that gives the perfect pretext for some random person to call you demanding money and giving you, whatever details you need in order to pay. Now, this could even be legitimate debt. And just by being more aggressive or even automating the process, a scammer could easily go after people using the data in this breach. And that's why I hate this breach, in particular, because of the information that's used here. They have all the sensitive information that a collections agency would expect to have. And they are the one interaction where a lot of these, I would say probably vulnerable people, are expecting to be hounded by debt collectors. And maybe if they're offered an attractive enough deal, they'd be willing to pay a little bit. Now, if that money isn't actually going towards clearing a debt, that is a pretty awful attack. And the fact that all this information is out there and this attack could now be done at scale, I am not pleased about this. So yeah, a lot of people who are in debt have a lot of information fed to them about the people who they are trying to collect from. So because these organizations collect that data and kind of concentrate it, it's truly awful to see a data breach that involves this amount of information about someone. Because not only could somebody attempt to make that debt worse, they could also use that information to try to collect debt that is not theirs. All right, this one I also hate, and I've actually seen this one before. So if anybody out there is on dating sites, then this is one that is in the wild and is apparently becoming effective enough that the FBI needs to do an update about this. So in this case, we have, oh, by the way, I am watching the chat. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Oh, and we have 70 people so far. Good to be here. All right, so this is what the scam is. So the scam is that somebody approaches you on a dating site and they're like, oh, wow, you're real cute. However, I don't know. Ew, pig butchering. Okay, I don't know. Yeah, okay. Sorry. They're like, yeah, you're so cute. Like, I would love to talk to you, but I've been burned before. And now I have no trust. But I'm so cute. So maybe you could just sign up for this verification service and we could talk on this other, more secure dating website. You don't mind that, do you? And you're just like, yeah, sounds great. I would love to go to this sketchy website and put in my personal information. Like, yeah, cool. Well, don't worry. It's free. You just sign up. They just need a credit card to verify your identity. And you're like, okay, cool. They're not going to charge me. You're like, no, never. We would never do that. We would never charge you. So like, okay, cool. I'll just put in my credit card information and it's free, right? Like, yeah, it's free. It's not free. It is a extremely expensive recurring charge. And getting it canceled is very difficult. You're basically giving consent, signing up for this, and basically at the end you get dumped off at this like dumpy little bus stop of a dating website where there's like nobody there, and the person who said they wanted to talk to you, they can't log in. There's a problem. They can't log in anymore, or they just block you. So a lot of people apparently have been falling down this funnel. Oh, they even have like a little graphic here. Let's see. Yep. So you meet an online dating website, you get directed to communications off the dating website to an encrypted platform, sends you a verification link to protect you from sex offenders or serial killers, and tells you got to register. Articles on the link appear to be from trusted media logos using scare tactics to coerce you to register. So it's basically they got like the MSNBC logo and like the CNN logo and Fox News logo and whatever else they want to make you think that this is a legitimate service. The link prompts you to enter your information to verify, and of course you need a credit card to verify. Like everybody knows that. And then they just hit you with the monthly bill, and there's no way to cancel. You got to basically go to your bank and like do a bunch of work and all this stuff. So here is one of the screenshots of gender discrimination and harassment safety global. Okay. Yeah, sure. Here's one of the scam websites. Just an example of what they look like. This guy looks worried. But yeah, so obviously this sort of scam isn't going to affect everybody. But if you hear anybody talking about these verification websites, or if you get this scam yourself, just be aware this is out there. It's very profitable. And if you get enough of these people, I hate that it's called pig butchering, but this is contrary to the romance schemes that are a different type of fraud called pig butchering that basically like kind of gets you to try to invest in something that seems like it's doing really well. So you'll continue to put more and more money into it. And then eventually when you try to withdraw your money, they just tell you that you can't. So be on the lookout. These scams are, I get them and I'm just like, are you serious? But there are a lot of people that are falling for this, and I have seen it in the wild myself. All right, short and sweet. London Drugs in Canada closed down all of their stores after a cyber attack. We here on the show generally know what a cyber attack means. It means a ransomware affiliate decided to pop some stuff off and probably cause some problems. But at the moment, it is merely a cybersecurity incident. So speculating any further, is merely speculation. So this is a chain of employing 9,000 people across Canada, and currently they are trying to be able to serve people with urgent pharmacy needs, but obviously attacking any sort of healthcare provider from a hospital to a pharmacy is definitely going to be something that affects a lot of patients. So the FCC coming in with a great move, in my opinion, on how, and again, this is crazy to me, how your carriers felt entitled to sell your data to sketchy third-party providers who were giving it to basically whoever asked, even over a year after they were told that this was happening and was a problem. So I don't feel a tremendous amount of personal sympathy in this case, and that's just me, because during this investigation, the FCC found that customer and subscriber data was actually being siphoned off to these businesses who were not doing their due diligence to get consent, or to make sure that the people who are accessing the information had a legal right to. So as a result, basically everybody was just being sold on the open market. And that was a problem that they did not remediate for a long time. So let's see the actual amount of time. But even though each company strenuously objected and appeared to be appealing, with the exception of T-Mobile, which is bravely taking the L, if I am to interpret this article correctly, it just took them a really, really long time to actually get to the point of fixing this stuff. Oh, here we go. 275 days to terminate their location-based service programs after the New York Times report, with one of them being even more excessively long. So yeah, this fine, I think, is entirely appropriate for basically leaking your location to anybody who had the cash to buy it for quite a long time. I think that everybody has the right to expect some privacy, but the companies here that are appealing are basically arguing that they have a right to your location at all times in order to provide 911 service. And that if they happen to just like, maybe not store that database really well or share it with companies that maybe aren't doing all of their due diligence, that's not really their problem. I would argue that personally, I would prefer if my location data was not sold to companies that don't get my consent and then share it with random people for a profit. But that's just me. So we'll see how the appeals go. All right, I just like this one mostly because it's called Muddling Meerkat. I don't know which company is making up these names at the moment. I know it was like CrowdStrike for a while, but yeah, okay, sure. So this was just an interesting report on DNS Reconnaissance. So basically, this group is probing the internet and is using infrastructure to try to assess the state of DNS and try to see if stage an attack on the open internet if that ever were to become necessary. So this sort of probing and kind of security assessment is pretty typical of any like espionage, but it looks like it's exploring specifically around DNS security and seeing if traffic could be redirected, specifically email traffic. So this appears to be coming directly out of China's Great Firewall, which is why a lot of researchers were noting that this was interesting activity. I mostly was attracted to the name of the threat actors here. So if you want to see more, here is my, this probably doesn't qualify for most confusing graph of the week. I'm sure we'll find it shortly. All right, so how did that crazy Change Healthcare attack happen? No MFA. That's the short of the story. So the Change Healthcare attack was crazy. It involved a ton of information. They paid the ransom to prevent the information from being breached, but they basically built their servers back up from scratch. They were reporting like $800 million worth of damage. So that's obviously like a ton of damage, and like it's going to be a long time until they're able to fully recover. I saw they're still not up to full capacity, and they still haven't completely recovered when it comes to payment processing and some other like member functions. But yeah, I was very curious to know what the root cause of this was, and I hadn't seen a report that was outlining exactly what happened. But it seems like the Citrix remote access service did not have multi-factor authentication enabled, and that allowed either credential stuffing or a phishing attack or some other sort of breach of a password to get in and remotely managing other systems. So yeah, I mean, it often comes down to pretty simple things, but 2FA is one of the like front runners for getting abused credentials or phished credentials involved in a very serious breach. Often, if MFA is enabled, this wouldn't be possible or would require substantially more social engineering or skill to pull off. So again, I'm not very surprised that something like this that caused the breach, but it's notable to finally see what the root cause was. All right, so some positive news. So Google is now paying, they basically like upped the budget from $30,000 to $300,000 for remote code execution vulnerabilities for select Android applications. The maximum reward is $450,000, and this is where it comes down to reports. So I hear, a lot of pen testers talking about how they love like, breaking things and whatnot. You get paid half for that. Literally half for that in this scheme. So if you provide a report and like a proof of concept exploit, easy steps to reproduce the vulnerability, and demonstration of the bug's impact, like that is required if you want to get the full thing. So these basically accurate and detailed descriptions, proof of concept, easy steps to reproduce, clear demonstration of the bug's impact, that doubles what you get for this sort of thing. And that's just because you can see where if somebody just dumps a proof of concept, it's poorly documented, it's not sure, it's not clear what's happening, they have to waste all this time to figure out what's going on. It's very, very much incentivized to write good, clear reports that make it easy for people to follow up and remediate. So I haven't seen this sort of structure before, where if you don't write a good report, you literally lose out on half the money. So again, pretty wild to me that like if you're a good report writer, you could be making so much more money. Like maybe teaming up with someone who finds bugs and then sucks at reporting them. Maybe form a team and just split the money between the two of you. I don't know, but it just seems like it's very, very notable that report writing is an unsung hero of skills that like you really need if you're going to go into pen testing or if you're going to be doing bug reports. So yeah, you could be brilliant at finding the bugs, but if you're not great at reporting them, then you lose out on half the cash. Again, wild to me, but it does make sense. So the amounts here have gone up, and that's because the market for these vulnerabilities is hot. So I imagine this is reaching almost maybe market parity with what you could get selling on unscrupulous company, these same sorts of vulnerabilities. So Google is trying to match the global spyware vendor market, and that is a difficult thing, but it looks like they're at least making an effort here. And for that, I am appreciative. All right, this one sucks. The Philadelphia Inquirer apparently has suffered a loss of the information of 25,000 people, and this is payment information. So often I'll be like, oh, don't worry, it's not their credit cards. No, this is bank account information, credit card information, and this is current. So that appears to be for subscribers and people who otherwise are trying to support the publication. So they detected that their system was breached in a cyber attack in 2023. That was a while ago. They took their systems offline, but the problem here was that the amount of information that was breached was just incredibly sensitive. Financial account numbers, credit card numbers, in combination with security code, access code, password, or PIN for the accounts. Yeah, that's a lot. That's too much. So everybody involved in this breach is in recipient of free credit monitoring. How wonderful for them. But again, I've made this point over and over, but these data breaches keep happening, and like there's no real consequences for, or at least there often are not real consequences for companies that don't store this information right. I don't know if that was the case here. It's just frustrating to see so many people getting, like, how much free credit monitoring can you, like, how much can you possibly scrutinize your credit report, like, after being breached just repeatedly by all these companies that like have all this information for you? It's just like, you know, getting phished or getting phone calls or getting scams or whatever else, like that doesn't, like, free credit monitoring doesn't do anything for that. Like, I don't know. All right, next up, this is again mostly attracted by the name on this news, but this is a new type of malware called Cuddlefish. And what's interesting here is that it lives on routers, and its job is basically to filter through the traffic, attempt to do some downgrading and spoofing, but basically go after credentials for cloud-based services. So yes, here we go, my confusing graph of the week. So what's going on effectively in this graph is that this is trying to find logins or other sorts of credentials that allow it to get into cloud environments. It's not really so interested in the wireless environment that it lives in. It's trying to get into cloud services that belong to organizations who are using this router. So as a way of gathering information and allowing larger breaches to happen, this is just like a bad time waiting to happen. Once this infection happens, it's going to do whatever it can to try to intercept these credentials and then use them to breach a cloud environment. So yeah, routers matter too when it comes to this sort of cloud environment. Seeing the clear link between devices like routers and cloud environment hacking is warms my heart. Oh, if only because, you know, I am much more on the Wi-Fi and router side of hacking, even though I do talk about a lot of cloud stuff. Not saying I like it, I just like the name of it. I think it's cute. All right. We also have Quantas exposing customer information, but not the way you might initially think. So this isn't like their customer information being exposed on an API where like hackers were able to scrape it or something. This is actually just random users being able to see other random users' itinerary, boarding passes, and more. So there weren't any confirmed cases. Oh, hello, James. Good to see you. There are no confirmed cases of anybody using like the wrong boarding pass or anything like that, but it definitely shows that sometimes when these systems get upgraded improperly, it can cause glitches that cause the same sorts of like information exposures that we see maybe deliberately done sometimes. So it looks like this was an accident. It was an internal system misconfiguration, and there doesn't seem to be any damage done here, but a lot of people were able to see details of travel that were not theirs. And it's kind of up to the honor system to make sure that none of them actually abuse that information. Okay, closing in. All right, so CISA is saying that a Gitlab account takeover bug is now being actively exploited in attacks. So this is a maximum severity Gitlab vulnerability. That's a 10 out of 10 for us who watch figure skating. It basically says that if you are able to find a vulnerable instance that has not been patched yet, you can become the owner of that instance through a password reset feature that does not use MFA. So if you have MFA set, you should be protected, kind of a theme, right, this week. I guess just in life, though, but also especially this. So if you don't have MFA, then this process can potentially give an attacker control over a GitLab environment and let them poison your supply chain. At that point, anybody using your repo, your code, whatever else in their own product can become infected, and so goes the supply chain attack. So this is a pretty severe one because it can enable supply chain attacks, and GitLab is used for a lot of people to manage their supply chain. So MFA is highly, highly recommended for these environments, but also patching these environments as soon as possible is a priority that CISA has been pressing this week. All right, so an update on the French hospital that was hit by ransomware. They are refusing to pay the Lockbit extortion demand, and it seems as though it is a double exploitation attack. So we'll still see exactly what is going on here, but it seems that Lockbit is now threatening to leak this stolen data. Often these ransomware affiliates don't go after healthcare organizations, especially like hospitals where people could die, but it seems like they don't care. So the FBI went after Lockbit with Operation Kronos relatively recently and caused some disruption there, but it seems as though they are still very much active. So you can expect to see probably more victims as some of these supply chain attacks like the impact of them settles in the next several weeks. All right, so this was an unsettling one. Pro-Russian hacktivists apparently have been targeting water facilities in the United States and Europe. This is an uptick, which is concerning because there are still vulnerable instances for a lot of these things up and connected to the internet. So the federal government has been reaching out and trying to give guidance to any organizations that are involved in critical infrastructure, especially around water, as there have been an increase in, quote, nuisance attacks. So all right, so let me just read the quote. Pro-Russian hacktivist activity against these sectors appears mostly limited to unsophisticated techniques that manipulate ICS equipment to create nuisance effects. So like potentially like causing things to go out of whack, needing to be shut down, evaluated, wasting engineer time, that sort of thing, not necessarily attempting to add lethal levels of chemicals to the water, as we saw somebody attempt to do, I think it was like 2 years ago in the news. So these sorts of attacks are obviously precursors or could be escalated to be more serious, but at the moment they are just creating annoyances. But the fact that a lot of these facilities are vulnerable and still online is a big priority of the federal government to try to secure, as so many people depend on, obviously, water. All right, so here is the number one story of the hour. So Dropbox had a filing, which I noted earlier, that indicated that they had some sort of incident. So let's dig into what actually happened and why it is a problem. So, all right, so Dropbox had a service. They basically bought HelloSign, and that became whatever their current service is. Or Dropbox Sign or whatever we're going to call it. Oh, sorry, Dropbox Sign e-signature. Sorry, I need to get that correct. So after buying HelloSign, this was integrated in all the ways that you would expect a signing service to need to be, with a lot of other services. That's going to be like Google Drive and like Slack and all these other things. And that means that it needs to store tokens in order to authenticate itself. It needs API tokens or some other sort of API token to allow it to connect to a service and at the very least read information so it can prepare it to be signed. Now, the threat here is that somebody got into this service, and it's not Dropbox in general, it's just this e-sign service, and they were able to rifle through and get customer details. Now, those customer details do include things like potentially like email addresses, phone numbers, hash passwords. That's all pretty bad. But the really bad, kind of scary thing is that potentially people could take the information that connects these DocuSign accounts, or HelloSign, now turned into Dropbox Sign e-signature platform, and basically abuse the read access that this thing has to explore throughout the environment and exfiltrate sensitive data. So if you have a threat actor who's clever, they might be able to take all this jumbled customer information, find the things that let them log into other software as a service like applications, and then begin downloading all this information that could lead to maybe a breach, maybe some sort of exploitation attack. So that's why a lot of researchers are concerned about this, because like, sure, okay, like Dropbox being breached, that's bad, and definitely like leaking that customer information or having that customer information lost is bad. But the problem here was, for one, it was a machine account, and that's something that I keep seeing over and over. We've been seeing in the news that these machine accounts that like log into other services and stuff, they're a real target for attackers, because often if they start to go off the rails or do something they weren't originally designed to do, they have elevated privileges. Nobody's really watching them. And it's hard to assess what's like normal behavior for them and what's not, unless you're specifically looking for it. So I know like a lot of the people over at Varonis were like, okay, like this is a difficult breach, right? Like, because unless you're watching these machine accounts, like we do, for example, it's really hard to know if one of them goes rogue and starts, for example, collecting information about your customers and exfiltrating it or something like that. So machine accounts seem to be behind the breach. That's kind of what happened. And then the danger is potentially these API tokens or other things that allow access to other environments could allow somebody to go in and start reading information they're not supposed to. Now, Dropbox has done things to try to mitigate this. So it's not like they're just sitting on their hands. Like, they have rotated credentials, they have rotated their API logins, they've restricted how API keys can be used until they're rotated by the customer. So that basically means if you're using an old API key and you haven't rotated yet, then you'll still be able to do some essential things, but anything risky, they're going to try to cut off as much as possible. So this was kind of a big one. So if you haven't been paying attention to this one, this is one where like we're hoping that there's no other exploitation or no further like problems that are going to happen from this. But just the fact that some of the data here involved could allow access to other applications is really the big danger. Hello, Stash. Good to see everyone. We're at 91 people on the stream. All right, we're almost through the news, everyone. I think we have 2 more to go. So, all right. Wow. So I often, when I have people on, I had Joe on recently talking about what's the right way to disclose like a data breach or to otherwise try to let someone know that there's problems going on. And I often tell them, don't ask for money or like try to be sensitive to the fears of an organization that they're being extorted. This is 100% the wrong way to do it. So this IT consultant downloaded a list of vulnerabilities and other things. Basically, it seems like he got the results of like a pen test or did some snooping around to find active vulnerabilities and problems, some of which could have been very damaging to the company if somebody were to take advantage of all those vulnerabilities and knew where all of them were, and also took a bunch of potentially damaging information about the company itself. So like financial stuff, all that, cut off access to the company laptop from the company. So he basically like cut them off from managing it, and then threatened to release the information to the media, which was going to damage the company and potentially maybe cause like cyber breaches and such, if they didn't pay him $1.5 million for unspecified discrimination, and I think emotional distress was the other one. So when the company confronted him that he'd stolen this data and that it was not legal for him to take it, he escalated his demands, cut the staffing firm's access to his laptop, and engaged in a lengthy extortion procedure that included legal threats for emotional distress and other claims. He attempted to engage the media in hinting at releasing the stolen information publicly or disclosing it through legal filings and reports to regulatory bodies, which might harm the company's reputation and investor confidence. So if you're looking for a way to disclose vulnerabilities, do not do this because it will get you a lot of time in prison. So the maximum sentence for extortion, 20 years. So I guess we will see what actually happens in terms of sentence. Sentences kind of all over the place for this, but I would say that this is a pretty bold one. Stealing information from your employer, holding it over their head, and then trying to get them to pay you $1.5 million for emotional distress is a pretty serious crime. So yeah, I mean, we see these sorts of like insider threats a lot where somebody starts downloading a bunch of sensitive information all of a sudden, randomly, you know, maybe right after they were fired or they're having a negotiation or some sort of like other conflict with the company. And then once that information's gone, it's really hard to get it back. And in this case, caused a huge kerfuffle that sent this guy to jail. All right, so speaking of jail, last story of today is one of the people behind the Revil ransomware gang is getting 13 years in prison. So this is a Ukrainian national that was extradited to the United States, ordered to pay $13 million in restitution, and sentenced to like a long time in prison. Now, at first I was, wow, that's a lot. But apparently this person who goes by the alias Robotnik was involved in over 2,500 attacks. That is more than an attack a day for a long time. Let's just say that. So just a stunning amount of attacks that this person may have been involved in, kind of justifying the lengthy prison sentence and the extradition all the way to the United States to account for all of the crime. So, I mean, we often see people being sentenced to prison for being involved in like ransomware affiliate groups, but this seems like somebody who was involved in like a hardcore ransomware gang. Not so much necessarily just affiliate, but much more active in a large number of attacks that this gang was famous for. All right, so that is just about all the time I have for news this week. I got to start preparing for the RSAC conference because by not tomorrow, but the next day, I'm going to be flying into San Francisco and getting ready to be at the booth. So if anybody here is going to be at the RSAC conference, come over to the Varonis booth, say hello. It's going to be great to see you. It's going to be crazy there. I think I mentioned on the last stream that I just heard that they're going to have like security there where you're going to have to get like scanned in, and like laptops and other like computer stuff is going to set it off. I'm going to be carrying all of the things that probably will set it off, like laptops, like camera equipment, cameras, like batteries, like all that stuff. So looking forward to a fun time getting in and out of the conference. But it's going to be really fun, and it's going to be a cool couple days in San Francisco to connect with people, get to see some other people that I've talked to, and see some other hackers there at the booth. So if you want to support the stream, you can always go to varonis.com/Kody, that's Kody, and it lets everyone know that you like the stream, you find the news valuable, and you want us to keep going twice a week, every week. And with that, this will be my final stream from here. For the rest of next week, I'll be streaming from San Francisco or otherwise somewhere weird. So enjoy this picture of, I'm not sure if you can make it out. There we go. Penguins coming out of a refrigerator for the one stream that you got it. And I will see everybody next week on Wednesday. Or I guess I could also see you in person at the RSAC conference. And if you miss Killian, don't worry, he'll be there. So come to RSAC to see him. All right. Goodbye, everyone.